Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update video today. We'll go through some of the newspapers here in Spain, check out what is happening in the press around the country today. We'll have a look at El Mundo, El País, RTV, the state broadcaster, and maybe El Confidencial as well. And then at the end of the video, we'll go into the comment section and check out what is happening there, as there was a fair bit of comment and debate left on yesterday's video. So we'll check that out at the end of the video. It's Monday again, and I hope that everybody managed to have a good weekend. The weather hasn't been too good in Spain, or at least not in this part of Spain. Very rainy the last couple of days, but the months of April and May are known for their rain in this part of the world. Now let's get straight into the news, and we'll start off with El Mundo. And as we can see, the main story that El Mundo is going with there on the left about the Madrid elections, 4M, the 4th of May. And the headline reads, Isabel Díaz Ayuso confía en poder gobernar sin Vox, pero teme más crispación. And in English, the headline would read, Isabel Díaz Ayuso is confident that she will be able to govern without Vox, but fears more tension. And tensions amongst the political parties, especially some of those more extreme political parties, Vox and Podemos, have been one of the main characteristics of this election campaign up until now. The words communism and fascism are being thrown around like there were no tomorrow, and I haven't heard these words mentioned so often since I was in high school learning history back in the 1980s. And Ms. Ayuso believing there that the election campaign is going to get even tenser in coming days. Now we'll go back into the news, and there's an article here about those death threats that some prominent politicians here in Spain received the other day in the form of a letter with bullets inside. And the headline reads that the postal service Correos calls for the immediate withdrawal of the guard who did not detect the letters with the bullets to Marlaska, Iglesias and Gamez. So the security guard that was operating the postal scanning machine going to lose his job because he didn't detect those bullets that were sent to three politicians here in Spain, Mr. Iglesias, Mr. Marlaska, the Home Minister, and another person there, Ms. Gamez, who is head of the Civil Guard here in Spain. That is also one of the reasons for the high level of political tension in the country at the moment, as the right-wing party Vox last week refused to recognise these threats, saying that they don't believe a word that the socialist government or Mr. Iglesias says. Now we'll leave El Mundo there, go to El País, check out what is happening there, and we'll click on this article here about the European Commission and the United States. And the headline reads, La Comisión Europea apuesta por permitir la entrada de los estadounidenses vacunados. The European Commission is committed to allowing the entry of vaccinated Americans. The president of the institution, Ursula von der Leyen, announces the intention to change the travel policy in an interview with the New York Times. So some good news there for people in the United States who are vaccinated and were planning a trip to Europe this year. I've seen lots and lots of comments in the comment section, people asking me about when those restrictions would be lifted, and now we have an answer with Ms. von der Leyen announcing that to the New York Times. So we'll keep an eye on that story over coming weeks and months and see how it's going to affect tourism here in Spain, because as we know, tourism from countries like the United States are a big source of tourists for countries like Spain and the European Union. Now we'll go back into the news, and there's an article here about Marbella, sede global del crimen organizado. So Marbella, global headquarters of organized crime. Cryptocurrencies and Kalashnikovs, drugs, luxury and reckoning. 100 criminal groups coexist on the Costa del Sol amid increasingly savage violence. They all agree this is where you have to be. So Marbella there making the headlines for all the wrong reasons. According to this newspaper, it's the global headquarters for organized crime, with more than 100 criminal groups coexisting down there. So not a good look for one of the most famous places on the Costa del Sol, unfortunately. Marbella dominated the headlines around 15 years ago because of a huge corruption case involving the town hall down there. In fact, I think it was one of the biggest corruption scandals here in Spain in the last 20 years. Various mayors and councillors of the Marbella town hall ended up in prison, and now we read stories like this one 20 years on. Now we'll leave El País there, go to RTV, the state broadcaster, and the main story the state broadcaster is going with here on the left, how is persistent COVID research progressing? A health challenge of which we only see the tip of the iceberg. And the other main story on the right, Pamplona has decided to suspend the San Fermin festival for the second consecutive year. Because as we know here in Spain with the current health situation, especially in places like Navarra, where Pamplona is the capital, that perhaps it's not a good idea to celebrate mass events just yet. And this, I imagine, is going to be a huge economic loss for that city. It's probably the most internationally famous of all the Spanish festivals, the San Fermines. Of course, there's other festivals around the country that are also quite popular, but I think the running of the Bulls Festival there would take position number one. Now, we'll leave the news there. We won't have a look at El Confidencial today, but we'll go into the comment section and check out what is happening there. We'll have a look at this one here from Diogo, who's going to give us an update on the situation in Portugal. In Portugal, the situation is quite normal now, probably with the exception of some high-risk municipalities, most of them with very little population. The incidence rate is now below 70 at a national level, and the rate of transmission is below 1 in all the mainland, with the exception of the north. Borders, unfortunately, will remain closed until May the 3rd, and it seems that it will be closed even after that day. The incidence rate in Spain is quite high right now. However, most of Spain has already passed the peak of this fourth wave, so fingers crossed. Yeah, Diogo, thanks for the comment, and good to see that the health situation in Portugal is improving. Here in Spain, as you mentioned, there are some areas that still have a bit of a problem to keep the incidence rate under control. Places in the north of Spain, the Basque Country, Navarra, for example. Here in Madrid, we are struggling at the moment. More places are being closed down, more municipalities are being confined, and it is proving to be a very difficult thing to get under control, this COVID-19. We all know that Portugal had a very bad time with the pandemic after Christmas, but very strict measures in place managed to get that situation under control, as Diogo mentioned there. And the borders between Spain and Portugal still closed until May the 3rd, but a possibility that that will be extended. So let's hope that the health situation in Portugal remains under control and that border opens up again sooner rather than later, because I, for one, want to be able to visit Portugal this year if possible and safe to do so. One here from Vincent: I'm in the US and don't have a huge issue with some kind of proof of vaccine generally. On one hand, it provides an additional measure that may prevent you from getting COVID even if you are fully vaccinated. Also, if I have to show something that shows that I have been fully vaccinated, and this provides a bit more freedom than I otherwise would have by not being vaccinated, seems like a reasonable trade-off to me. Yeah, Vincent, thanks for the comment. Obviously in relation to a comment that we saw yesterday by somebody in the UK saying that there are quite a few people in that part of the world, the United Kingdom, that are against things like COVID passports because it might mean a loss of freedom. Here in Spain, as I mentioned yesterday, you don't really hear too many people opposing the COVID passport or the green certificate, and I'm not really sure what the general feeling is in places like the United States, but you there saying that you wouldn't have a problem if it could guarantee that you got some of those freedoms back. I also don't have a problem. I think it's going to be necessary if you want to travel, if you want to go to mass events, for example, if you want to go to a concert or a football game, you are most likely going to have some type of certificate. And I, for one, want to be able to travel back to Australia one day to see my family, and I think it's going to be necessary also if I want to do something like that. But it's an interesting debate, and people are entitled to their opinions on the matter. And finally, one here from Derek: I am likely to give Spain a miss this year too, and depending on the situation, will most likely head to Greece. We travelled to both last year, but Greece is easier for stopping off-site in a motorhome. Yeah, Derek, thanks for the comment. We mentioned yesterday that maybe a lot of people in the UK are going to give Spain a miss this year, deciding to go to another holiday destination like yourselves, going to Greece there, or maybe just staying at home and having one of those so-called stayed vacations. Some people are not happy about the current health situation in Spain, don't see it as a safe destination, and some people don't want to come here because you have to wear a mask basically everywhere you go. So those are some of the reasons why people are being put off coming to Spain on holiday this year. But we all saw the headlines the other day. Spain is desperate to get tourists back down here again from the UK, and I'm sure the government is going to do everything in its power to convince people in the United Kingdom that Spain is a safe holiday destination this summer. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.